Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the AP Microeconomics series on APFORTEENS. Today, we're going to be talking about the different types of governments that you're going to see in microeconomics. So, let's get started. Now, last time we discussed a number of different things. We answered different questions, mainly what type of goods do you produce in an economy? How much input do you have to put in order to make those goods? And who gets the final product at the end of the day? In this episode, we're going to be discussing something different. We're going to talk about economic systems, economic governments, and that's about it. So let's get started with that. Now, what exactly are we discussing today? Well, we're going to be discussing three different systems. We're going to discuss communism, socialism, capitalism, those three different systems, and we're going to discuss the pros and cons of each of those systems. All right? So first off, we're going to start off with communism. Now, communism is a system to negate any sense of wealth inequality, which sounds really good. It's designed to minimize the imbalance in wealth. One political party divides the wealth among all of the citizens, and that's typically the Communist Party. Now, the pros and cons of communism, and there are pros of communism despite backlash against it. Pros: there is no class system. There's no division among wealth. Unemployment is basically gone because the government basically requires you to have a job and have that specific job for your entire life. And it gives citizens basic needs, so the ability to have food, water, shelter, and other things like that. If communism is done correctly, which it almost never is, if it's done correctly, it can provide your citizens with basic needs easily. It also has dictators in power, which when you first hear it sounds really bad. Having dictators in power means corruption, right? But it also means efficiency. Typically, when you have a king in power, bills are able to pass because he thinks of a bill, he signs it, and he's the one that's basically the judge. So this dictatorship does bring efficiency. It also brings a strong and safe country because communism has the ability to unite everybody together. Now, cons, again, like I mentioned before, dictators have the potential and are most likely going to be corrupt. You don't know them, you don't know who they are, what they are, where they are. They're basically isolated from everybody else and thus can abuse power easily. Anti-ambition. Communism has the reputation of making the citizens not feel like they need to work because everything is given to them. And it fuels poverty. Everybody is in the same class system, but the problem is that class system is likely going to be a poor class system, with most people struggling to make anything of themselves. And corruption, as I mentioned before, your dictators, your business leaders and stuff like that, eventually communism doesn't last unless you adapt it, like certain other countries have in the world today. And the people get no say. With communism, you have one political party and you vote for that political party, and the people don't get to choose whether they want to go with one idea or another. Now, socialism is different. Socialism aims to fairly distribute wealth and incentivize work. It uses trade unions and managers to do so. It's similar to communism in its ideas and end goals. Now, there is a difference between socialism and communism. Many people think that they're the same thing, but they're not. Rather than the government controlling wages, wages are determined between unions and managers. So some pros and cons of that. A pro: all people get education, healthcare, and other sort of things like that because socialists believe that that's a requirement for sustainable life. It's a classless society. Similar to communism, pure socialism has no class. And it also brings wealth equality because every single person has roughly the same amount of wealth. You won't have any monopolies, which are something that has been a critique of capitalism. There are monopolies, people controlling entire markets, and thus preventing people from being able to enter that market and try to make money for there. Some cons. Governments are in control. This is a con, especially if you are a pro-social rights and the little man being equal to the big man. Governments, and especially national governments, are in control, which makes it difficult for people to get in there unless they are part of that government. Higher taxes are also a con. Taxes are necessary. However, when they get to a point, as they could be in socialism, where taxes are extremely high, it may cause the people to riot. Bureaucracy is also a huge con. Bureaucracy is the one thing that people can't stand because of how many red lines and regulations you have to go through. And socialism has to increase those bureaucracies because of all the different benefits that they're offering. And government unnecessary spending. The government, when it has all of this revenue, they're going to be spending on things that they may think is useful but doesn't actually benefit many people. Finally, we go with capitalism. Now, capitalism has the private individual controlling the factors of production with the main goal of creating a profit. Wages between managers and employees or the union are determined by the managers and employees. There's no trade unions or other things like that. Supply and demand determine the market focus, and the government isn't typically as involved as they are in socialism or communism. So some pros and cons of that. Economic freedom means political freedom. Typically, when you have one, the other one increases as well. And capitalism is seen in democracies. Its efficiency economically. You use only supply and demand in pure capitalism, which makes the free market the controller of every economic decision. And economic growth is a lot easier in capitalism than it is in communism or in socialism. People have a say as well. People can choose whether they want to purchase this or that, and that as a result makes it likely that you're going to have this or that. The free market moves, the demand increases or supply decreases, so people have a say. Now, there are some cons. In pure capitalism with no government touch whatsoever, there is a high chance that there are going to be monopolies or monopolies of power, which is, again, similar to a control in that market, thus making it impossible for other people to enter in, and that monopoly can charge whatever they want because they're the only thing offering whatever service it is. Social benefit is typically ignored in favor of the free market as well. There may be some situations where people just can't, the supply and demand isn't enough, and without government help, these social benefits are typically ignored. Wealth inequality is one of, if not the biggest issues of capitalism, according to critics of it. Wealth inequality makes the argument between the top 1% and the bottom 99% a very real thing. And capitalism creates boom and bust cycles that are typically larger than your communism and socialism government. Your booms are going to be great, but your busts are going to be pretty bad as well. That's going to wrap it up for this video. Thank you very much for watching. If you like this video or any of the other videos on the channel, please subscribe, leave a comment or like this video, answer the question in the comment section down below as well. Thank you very much for watching and take care.